As it turns out, if they hadn't ruined it for us all in that first bit in the morning, we would have been on the beach about half an hour earlier, and we would have been hit by the wave.
Yeah.
As it happened, we were just walking on to the beach, and we suddenly saw the wave come in, and people go flying.
How many of your
everywhere.
kids were with you then? All of them?
All of them. All four, yeah.
Yeah.
So we turned, we ran. We happened to be. We were just so fortunate. We were the only hotel in. It's a very flat area along that stretch, but we were the only hotel that happened to be on a hill. And so we ran into the hotel car park, and it's literally at the height of the hotel car park is where the water stopped rising.
Well, hey, welcome to another episode of Paul Mort Talks Shit. And today I am talking shit with Mr. Dax Moy. Dax, how are you?
Excellent, mate. We're really looking forward to it.
Me too. You know what's mad about this conversation is, and I've already done the intro here, but I've known Dax for about 15 years, and I've seen him maybe once in the last 7, which is mad. So this is not even an interview. This is a legit catch up that you have the privilege of listening to. So we're going to be talking about things that you may not have any clue about. We'll probably start talking about memories where like, what are these two talking about again? So Dax, it's funny enough. The first question I'm going to ask you is, and this is a selfish question: where have you been for a little while?
Where I've been for a while.
Yeah. Because I want to interject this with a. I'm interrupting you already, but I want to frame this as a few years ago, everyone would have been like, "Oh, Dax Moy," but the where I'm moving right now, I'm working with a lot of younger guys. They're like, I'm really excited for them to hear you because you've kind of been under the radar for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying by that?
Yeah.
You are a very public figure, and then you had your challenges, and then you're in this new little lovely little world that you're in right now.
Yeah, I mean, without bragging, it would be fair to say I was probably one of the best known personal trainers.
The first note that I've got here is world's most expensive PT.
Right. Yeah. Certainly in the UK for 15 years straight, I was the highest paid PT.
Yeah.
Ran several of my own studios. Everything was going great.
Yeah.
Kind of looking after, mentoring personal trainers, running courses.
Oh, you mentored me?
Yeah, all that. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Unlucky. It was a long time ago. Unlucky. Yeah.
And then, so basically about 3 years ago, I closed down my PT studio, and I was going to say it was a good thing. It was a good and a challenging thing at the same time. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my identity had been tied up in PT and talking to PTs and helping them. As a kind of side business initially, and then kind of turning into something much bigger and much more fulfilling for me. Mm-hmm. I got more into what people these days would call life coaching, coaching in all its different formats. So kind of working with a lot of what people would term A-listers and all that kind of stuff, but still keeping my connection to PTs, but mostly in teaching them how to get out of the harder, faster, more push.
Yeah, motivation.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And teaching them a bit more about how brains really work, not just mindset, not just psychology and all that. Anyway, so that side of the business really kicked off. And what I found was at one point I had 3 personal training studios on the go at the same time. And just the hassle of dealing with staff turned into the part that actually kind of took away a lot of my love, a lot of my enjoyment. There's always, not all the staff, obviously. Yeah. I've had some brilliant people work with me over the years, but people taking dodgy payments under the table, people working with clients off site, people not following the systems. And of course, my name was above my studio door. So whenever people didn't get the kind of experience they wanted, people would go, "Oh, I've been to that Dax Moy place." They didn't say, "Oh, I worked with, let's say, John so-and-so," right? They would say, "Oh, I've been to that Dax Moy place and it was crap." So my name was kind of getting dented. And yet in the other areas of my life, if people work with me personally or with a select part of my team, or if they came and experienced me in other formats like the education, the mentorship, the actual one-to-one coaching, they were having a brilliant experience.
Yeah. Back then, it was like, it's not like now where you don't need a team.
Right.
Or your team is tech.
Yeah.
Your team are tech people. You can be the face of it. Back then, the only way to grow a PT business was either by hiring staff or doing what I did, which was just starting groups.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? There wasn't you didn't have apps. You didn't really. Facebook was kind of just a thing.
Yeah.
We were still on MySpace. Me and Dax are still on MySpace. No shit. We're still on MSN Messenger and shit.
And I had a. It doesn't even exist anymore. I had a Ning community of 15,000 personal trainers at the time when
Ning.
that was incredibly unusual.
And that was Facebook groups.
Yeah, effectively the
Before.
same.
Yeah.
Before Facebook even existed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so the PT side really started to come down for me. Partly to do with my general enjoyment of it, partly to do with the fact that it was, even though I was really well paid personally, for the amount of work I put in to run a team and keep a team busy and all of that kind of stuff, it was far less lucrative than the other stuff I was doing.
Yeah.
You know, my one-to-one clients were paying me 50 grand a year, and you know, I'm having to work really, really hard to earn the same kind of money out of an entire team. So you know, that didn't make much sense. At the same time, I was kind of kicked in the nuts by PTSD.
Yeah, let's talk about this.
Yeah,
because we've never even talked about this, me and you.
No, not really in depth.
It's not really. We haven't really talked about it in depth. So, PTSD. Talk us through this, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a fairly traumatic upbringing in lots of different ways.
Yeah.
But I think the excuse me, I think the bit that triggered the PTSD for me was related initially to the tsunami. I was in the tsunami, like literally in the water in the tsunami, carrying dead bodies
in Thailand,
Thailand, resuscitating people, holding bits of bodies together, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously that was traumatic at the time, but it was one of those things that I come from an ex-military background. I've been trained for a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I kept my calm, I kept my cool, came back from it a little bit shook up, but nothing major, and life carried on.
Dude, stay in this tsunami experience for a little bit, because I know it was a traumatic as fuck experience, because you are saving lives.
Yeah.
People were dying in your arms, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Including, you know, kind of seeing little dead babies and all kinds of stuff, you know. So it was shocking to go through at the time, as anyone who says it says it isn't. But I think part of my training just kind of kicked in, and I was while I was boots on the ground, I was very matter of fact. I would, you know, I'd see people, I'd take control of the situations I was in. You two grab this, you do that, carrying things and bodies and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So you were able to compartmentalize it, would you say?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that the military does for you. It trains you to keep going during stressful, anxious, even fully traumatic times, because you just go, what needs to be done? Your brain kind of starts to break things down into, there's an outcome I want. Yeah. There's something in the way of the outcome. Yeah. How do I address the obstacle to the outcome?
Yeah, mechanical.
And it is it's very process driven, and that's what the military they train you to do that constantly.
Yeah.
And that's really what happened to me during the tsunami. And you know, because we were walking onto the beach. We'd just flown over from Australia. We'd spent a month in the Australian outback. And we decided, you know, it was wonderful. Like, we'd been everywhere. We'd done so many different things, but we decided we wanted to kind of sit on a beach for a little while. So we kind of, as a last minute, because we were supposed to fly home from Sydney, and I said, "Oh, fuck it, let's go and fly to Thailand and spend a week in Thailand." And so we landed on Christmas night, and we got in late. Woke up the next morning, kind of, the kids were just being a real pain in the arse. They were arguing with each other and fighting and all. And so I'd had a real go at them and said, you know, kind of, you're ruining it for us all. And but as it turns out, if they hadn't ruined it for us all in that first bit in the morning, we would have been on the beach about half an hour earlier, and we would have been hit by the wave. As it happened, we were just walking on to the beach, and we suddenly saw the wave come in and people go flying.
How many of your kids were with you then? All of them?
All of them. All four, yeah. So we turned, we ran. We were just so fortunate. We were the only hotel it's a very flat area along that stretch, but we were the only hotel that happened to be on a hill. And so we ran into the hotel car park, and it's literally at the height of the hotel car park is where the water stopped rising.
Jeez. And
so we got the kids safe. We put them into the hotel room, and then I went back out into the water and kind of started helping people. Because we'd been on the road, like in the outback, we had a med kit and all that kind of stuff with us. So we set up like a first aid station in the hotel lobby, and I was just kind of going out and bringing bodies back and bringing people back. And, you know, Dina, my wife, she was there kind of bandaging them up and kind of comforting them and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, once a few people start doing that, kind of it creates like a bit of momentum. And so then it wasn't like just us two were saving Thailand, you know. You know, but certainly that sort of like started a flow of people that were kind of getting involved in rescuing people, you could say. So I mean that was a major thing. I had a good cry that evening after it was, you know, kind of, you know, I'd literally been a rock, and I went up into the hotel room, sat down on the bed, and just like burst into tears.
Yeah.
Quite cathartic though, and we were all in shock. But
Yeah,
we
of course.
stayed there for a lot of people left, and we stayed there for the whole week that we were due to be there.
Yeah.
And we just kind of we kept interacting with the local community. We were out on the beach every day, kind of clearing away debris and all that kind of stuff. So we stayed. We came back to the UK, and about a year later, or just a little bit more than a year, basically I got a phone call at work, and it was about my brother. And my brother had basically he was an alcoholic. He'd kind of various periods of really cleaning himself up and then letting it go and cleaning himself. And at one time he tried to stop cold turkey from alcoholism. It's apparently it's one thing you can't do. Like if you're on opium, if you're on any other kind of, you can more or less stop cold turkey. If you're a really high level drinker, it can really screw you up. So he basically made himself an epileptic as a result of that. So one day I got a call at work, and basically it's your brother. I go. We hadn't seen him for a while, which was actually quite normal. But yeah, basically he was dead on his sofa. I went into his house, and it was like it was like a zombie,
Really?
black and blue and decomposing and all kinds of stuff. And that's so obviously that was
traumatic.
That's two things in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, like at the time it felt like work saved me. Like I dived more or less straight, but now I realise I was just kind of masking things and
you put a
burying it.
plaster
I didn't really want to face it, so it was business as normal. I was back in work the next day, literally working with clients. And yeah, all of that was highly traumatic, and within a fairly short space of time. And it was around about this time, or shortly, actually no, not immediately, about 3 years later, is when the PT studio business started to lose a lot of its luster for me. And when I started realizing just how badly I was being ripped off by people that I really trusted as members of my staff, and how much I was being screwed over. So work got really stressful. And it was like the stress at the studios opened the floodgates for the PTSD. It was like you'd boxed it all up and pretended, I'm a, I wasn't doing it out of any form of bravado. I wasn't saying, oh, this doesn't affect me. I just didn't want to have it. Right. And I didn't want it. Obviously, no one wants it to affect them. And suddenly, it's one of the ways I describe it is like a bucket, kind of when that bucket keeps getting full, eventually it gets to the top and it overspills over the brim. That's when you have like the breakdown, that flood. And that's kind of what happened for me. The studio became this kind of constant drip on an already 3/4 full bucket. And when it reached the top, when it overflowed, is when I kind of got the PTSD. And I was driving home from work one day. I was driving down the M11, and I literally, like, it, as clear as day, saw a body like fall out of the sky, land on the bonnet of the Land Rover, and I spun and like did like a 360 on like completely turned the car around, pulled over on the hard shoulder, like everyone's going nuts at me. I pull over on the hard shoulder. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Look around, like I could have sworn there should be a body laying in the road or on the car. There's nothing there. And then little things like I'd get micro flashbacks of just like I'd be sat there having a conversation like this, and then in the corner of my eye I'd like see one of the bodies from the scene. I didn't connect it at first. I'd just see something, and I go, no, there was someone there just now. And then
so that the kind of thing happens in movies quite a lot. I didn't, but it's a real thing.
Oh yeah. Or it was real for me. I can't speak to anyone else's experience. But it was real for me. And then that became multi-sensory. So I'd hear things, and I'd smell decomposition and stuff like that in a room. I'd walk in and like I'd almost gag. It'd be like there's either something dead in here or something was dead in this room. And that's what it'd feel like to me. And it was one of those weird compartmentalization things again. I could work with you as my client, and I could be training you, everything would be fine. I'd go back up to my office, I'd sit down. 10 minutes later, I'm kind of getting a flashback, and they built up.
So it's kind of like when you're, and this is a guess, it's kind of like when you're consciously doing something, you can compartmentalize it, but then as soon as your unconscious kicks in, that's when all that started.
It was exactly like that. So my strategy then became even more of what I was doing before, which was to keep myself really busy. Right. And I was literally doing everything, you know, everything I could to keep my brain busy. And it ended up to the point where, because I was having major nightmares, like waking up in the night screaming and like kicking around and throwing my arms around. You know, the amount of times Dina got accidentally
Dina's
punched
only
by
tiny
me.
as well.
She's tiny, yeah. And yeah, so there was a lot going on, a hell of a lot going on, and it got to the point where I think for a year and a half, my average night's sleep for a year and a half was about 90 minutes. That's what I slept. And you know, you always hear about this. You can go crazy if you don't sleep enough. I was definitely kind of losing the plot. I'd sit up. Sometimes I'd just stare at the wall in my bedroom. I'd be sat on the edge of the bed and I'd stare at the wall in the bedroom and burst into tears for no reason. Yeah. And so my family had to kind of put up with that. But somehow I was still able to. At the time I had my very best financial year ever. During all of that,
because
I kept busy. I didn't ever want to stop.
Yes.
But I also run myself into the ground, and I piled on loads of weight. I mean, I'm a big guy now, but it's mostly muscular. But kind of when I got to about 18.5 stone, not through really bad food or anything like that. Mostly through lack of sleep. And then if I really did need to sleep, it started out like I'd drink a bottle of wine a couple of times a week, because at least it'd be more like passing out sleep.
Yes.
Then it turned to I'll drink a bottle of wine every night of the week, and then I turned to I'll drink 2 bottles of wine because 1 bottle was not doing it enough.
Because of the size,
size
of your body,
yeah.
right?
You know, and then you know, at one point I ended up on like 3 bottles of wine a week for the better part of 6 months.
Mate, were you trying to solve all of this on your own?
To begin with,
because you're a very proud guy.
Yeah. To begin with, I definitely was. Yeah. I didn't need anybody's help.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of didn't want anybody's help.
And you don't want to put on to people. You don't want to put it on to your family, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also sense that, you know, and it was definitely a level of arrogance, but because of my background and the work that I do with my, you know, I was a best-selling author of a mindset book, right? Kind of you know, all of that kind of stuff, and I teach
you were
around
coaching people, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, like there's no one out there going to be able to do what I do, right? Like, why am I going to pay? But of course, you know, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. Even if I've come to terms with the fact that that's just arrogance, right? But even if it wasn't arrogant, even if it was true that I happened to be fucking Tony Robbins level of changing millions of lives around the world. Oh. Tony Robbins can't treat Tony Robbins.
Yeah. Right? By the way, I'm the next Tony Robbins, just so you know.
Right.
But mate, do you know that thing that you said there? We're gonna have to timestamp that you can't see the picture of you in the frame. I'm stealing the shit out of that, just so you know. Actually, we'll edit that out and we'll pretend that I said it. Yeah. So you were trying to solve it on your own, and
trying to solve it on my own, really getting nowhere. Like it came to a point where, you know, Dina, my wife, really supportive, and she would say, right, you need time alone. Get on a plane, go here. Get on a plane, go there. And she'd just keep, you know, whenever I reached like a really dark point, and I was getting increasingly darker.
Well, yeah,
right? Yeah, increasingly darker.
Yeah.
Which is really unusual for me. Obviously, you've known me a long time. I'm what most people would consider an optimist, right?
Yeah, and you're a level-headed.
Yeah, I'm kind of.
You're not like me where it's fucking.
Yeah,
I'm still like that now, but you're.
I mean, I do have rage in me. I have a lot of rage historically, but over the years I've learned how to moderate and modulate it so that it serves me.
Remember when we were going to fuck that guy up?
Absolutely.
There was this guy online that he was always talking shit about me and Dax, and we're going to go and fuck him up. Yeah.
I reached. Do you know what? Just as an aside, I reached such a level of rage over that that at the time I was planning how I could actually do it. I was actually online looking for flight tickets, and then I thought, you probably won't need it, but what if you needed a weapon? What would you? And I was thinking of sharpening a pencil because I could get it through customs.
Like Jason Bourne.
That's how rageful I was at the time.
Man, yeah.
Yeah. So kind of.
Sorry, mate. I totally threw you off topic there.
There is rage
Remember
there.
that time we were going to kill that guy. Yeah.
There is rage there.
I'll bring the shovel so we can bury him under the fucking patio.
But no, I am very level. I'm very level. But during that period, I was up and down, and like I was experiencing things that never bother me. I was starting to get road rage, and somebody look at me funny in the street, and like, what the fuck's he looking at? Like, all of these things that just aren't part of my personality.
Yes.
They're not. You know, I've worked really hard on myself over the years.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a 50-year-old man now, right? Kind of double granddad, and you know, I've worked really hard to kind of make myself into the kind of person that I respected.
Yeah.
but I was seeing more and more things that I didn't respect about myself showing up in how I was behaving and how intolerant I was becoming of various things.
Yeah. And mate, do you think that, and again, it's not off topic, but do you think this lack of sleep thing, this just people are exhausted thing, is part of the reason why this whole depression and suicide thing is so high? Like, it sounds very simple, that, doesn't it? Yeah. But I'm convinced that most people aren't depressed, they're just fucking exhausted.
Yeah, I'd agree with you to a large extent.
Not everyone.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of this thing is down to just people are fucking exhausted.
Yeah.
And you're saying that was down. I mean, obviously PTSD was the thing, but that lack of sleep kicked you in the balls.
Yeah. Basically, there's a saying in the military that fatigue makes cowards of us all, right? Fatigue makes cowards of us all. And, it's absolutely true. Like if that's why so much military training, you can't shoot live bullets at soldiers when in training all the time, right? You can't throw live grenades at them. So what do they use in the military to bring you to the closest you will ever experience in combat? They have you tired all the time. For extreme physical activity, you get to bed late, they disturb you in the middle of the night, and they kind of, get you up
feed you a full meal.
Right? All of that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And it's because the closest they can ever bring someone who's training for an environment where they're gonna be tired all the time is to show them how they operate when they're tired.
Wow.
And then automate the processes for when you are exhausted. This is what you keep doing, whether you like it or not, whether you enjoy it or not, whether you want to do it or not. This is what you do. This is the process.
Yeah.
So fatigue makes cowards of us all. Absolutely, but it would agree that kind of in so many ways. For me, I was showing up cowardly, and by cowardly, what I mean is, excuse me, what I mean is I wasn't living out my full courageous self, like the version of me that I knew I was. I was being a different version.
Yes.
And I wasn't checking myself on that, and I wasn't calling myself out on it.
Yes.
I wasn't saying, what the standard is.
Yeah.
Go and live it. I started by it for about a year, the darkest year of the whole thing. I started buying into the idea that I was allowed some kind of exception. You're going through this, so be kind to yourself.
You're allowed to do that.
Right.
Dude, I did that for a little bit with bipolar. I'm like, I've got bipolar.
Right.
I'm bipolar. I have bipolar.
Right.
That was my whole thing. Of course I'm allowed to behave like that. I'm bipolar.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember one guy online, he's quite a famous fitness guy. He was like, I apologize for all my behavior. It's me bipolar. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Like it has a life of its own.
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah. I totally resonate with that, yeah.
Yeah. And, so there's that. I think there's a balance, or not even the balance. There's a distinction to be made when you're going through something that is pushing you, pulling you, nudging you off of particularly your own respect for yourself. And that's to not spend any time trying to be kind to yourself. Well, everyone it's all happy clappy these days, and everyone talks about kindness to ourselves. And kindness is fine. I'm not saying to be mean to yourself. But there's something that's far more valuable than kindness, and that's fairness. Am I being fair to myself? Right? Because when you're being fair, the distinction between the two, kind is like, if I was being really kind today, I'd say, oh, Paul, you look fantastic, and did it, right? If I'm being fair, I'd be telling you the truth about how you're coming across to me, right? And it's the same for ourselves. If I'm being kind to myself, I'm like, yeah, but PTSD is kicking your ass, and you are exhausted, and to be fair, that guy did look at you funny, and you start to justify and rationalize.
I love that. There's a difference between kindness and fairness, because I think this new body positive thing is all about loving yourself. I'm like, that's not an excuse to fucking eat what you want and treat your body like shit. I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
Being fair to yourself is, I ate that. But it's not like an excuse. I think that kindness thing often comes across as excusing yourself for behavior that isn't actually that kind to yourself.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not a justification for people to, it's just as damaging, if not more so, to go the other way and be shitty to yourself all the time, right?
Yeah. Hard on yourself.
So it's not saying that kind of that's better.
Fair's the middle ground, in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair. But I think in a way, like, it goes even beyond the middle ground. It's a principle to live. Like, you can't live by a principle of kindness, right? Kindness is always going to be subjective. I might think I was really kind bringing you a cup of coffee, right, into the studio this morning, right?
But I'm off caffeine.
And you're off caffeine, or you go, well, I've already had 6, like, or whatever.
Yes.
You may not judge what I've just done as kind, right? But most of the time, we can usually come to an agreement on what's fair or unfair.
Yeah.
Right. And we ourselves know, like, and that's why you get that kind of that I was a big dick alert after every really foul argument you ever have with someone, right? You walk out and then afterwards you go,
Shit.
oh, you're kind of cringe and you go, did I really say that?
Yeah.
Did I, like, that was unfair,
Yeah.
right? We're never really going to be able to measure kindness. Like,
Yeah.
kindness is in the
Subjective.
Yeah.
Subjective, yeah.
People could make the same argument about fairness, but most of us have an idea. Our barometers are a lot more sensitive to fairness, which is why, if you look at the world today, right, but kind of a lot of the uproar is about what people think is fair, not what they think is kind. It's about what they think is fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that I realized is that I needed to get back to being fair to myself, and fairness. The first thing for me, or always strikes me, is about remembering who you said you'd be when this happens.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the thing that, like, I've got notes in every one of my journals. I've got a stack of journals like this. And in every one of them somewhere, remember who you said you'd be when this happens. And I don't care what the this is, right? We can't plan out for every eventuality, but when things happen and you go, okay, who did I say I'd be when I had a really bad financial year and I worried about closing the business? Who did I say I'd be when, kind of I was tempted to do something this way? Or who did I say I'd be?
Yeah.
And we don't always get it right first time, but once you've had the experience, I won't really call it a mistake, but once you've had the experience of being unfair to yourself, that's the opportunity for you then to say, what would I do next time then? If this same thing happens tomorrow, like if this is my life from this day forward, and this thing happens, what would I do tomorrow to mitigate this so it doesn't kick me in the arse as much?
It's kind of, we ask this question, knowing what I know now, what would I do differently?
Right.
Yeah, knowing what I know, because at the time you only knew what you knew, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, using the PT example, we used to have, our clients would come and they go, oh, I'm running late, kind of, boss kept me behind at work.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of the junior coaches would go, oh, that's okay, I understand. Right. So what I would say to my clients is, okay, so what happens if that becomes the new normal and your boss keeps you late behind at work every night? Yeah. What's our plan for that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, so bringing it back onto the topic, for me, it was, what is my plan for getting back to myself? And I realized that for a period of that, when I was feeling really sorry for myself, I wasn't following any plan to get back to me. I was mostly justifying why I was at where I was at. Right. And in being kind to myself, saying, well, of course life is like this. And of course you feel like that. And it didn't take away any of the factors that I was exhausted. I was run down. I was terrified for my sanity. I thought I was, one thing that I identify with most about myself is I'm quite an intellectual, and most people see me as a fairly kind of smart or wise fella, right? And I think that partly comes down to what you said. I've always been fairly even keel with most things, right? So I think that's part of it. To meet yourself as somebody who's not that, and to see and hear and smell and have all these things going on in your brain is terrifying. Like it's like, what if this is me every day now? And I was terrified. But I even though I was terrified, I hadn't created a plan for dealing with it. I just kind of let it wash over me and sort of sat there wallowing in it, hoping for it to pass.
Yes.
And then
hope isn't a strategy.
Right. Hope isn't a strategy ever, right? And so it was it was when I reached the darkest part of that I was like, remember who you said you'd be. And then that was the kind of climbing back out of the hole.
Yeah. Wasn't there an incident where you thought you were having a heart attack or something?
Oh no, I've had multiple heart incidents. I had a kind of a mini brain incident. Like all of these related to excessively high stress hormones for excessively long periods of time, lack of sleep. I mean, when you're not sleeping, your hormones are all over the place, and that has untold negative effect on the body.
Yeah. So what was because you're handling this now, right?
Yeah.
You're starting to get a handle on this now. What was the whole, I almost want to say healing process, but would that be accurate? Would that be an accurate term?
Yeah. Yeah, it would be, yeah. That's not too flowery for what I went through. And in fact, I
can't believe I've just said it.
Yeah.
I think flowers came out my mouth when I said that. But you're not healing you're not healing thing. Healing thing, yeah.
So I literally looked into everything. So I went to everything from NLP practitioners. I went to life coaches and all that kind of stuff. What really, the first really big break, and this is going to sound so weird, particularly in the context of you spitting out those flowers just now.
Yeah.
Is I went to Sedona in Arizona. I booked a trip to go to one. It was basically a holistic healing center, right? but unlike anything you've ever heard of or seen before. So, and as weird as it is, like I had everything going. It was fucking crazy, but it was really good. I had a Hopi Native American Indian shaman dancing over me, beating drums and chanting.
Yeah.
I had a breath worker literally making me go, and all different breathing patterns for like 90 minutes. And that's weird. Like you hallucinate when you do that for a period of time.
Yeah. Gonna activate DMT or something, right?
Yeah. All of that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I went to like horse whisperers and was like
Sorry.
I tell you what.
The Mort Whisperer.
The Mort Whisperer.
Hang on. You got to go into this a bit more. Horse Whisperer.
A horse whisperer, right? So basically, what you do is you meet with this person who basically guides you kind of up and down the stables, and a horse picks you, right? Kind of it's weird, but a horse picks you, right? From that you get handed like a tarot deck.
Okay.
Right, and a tarot deck that is like basically this whisperer doesn't want to know anything about you beforehand, right? Nothing about you. Mm-hmm. So they want to work from that point forward. Hand you this tarot deck upside down, and you kind of pick out a card. And the card I picked out was effectively it was the foam of horses, like in Lord of the Rings, right? Do you remember when it cut through that ford, right?
Yes.
It was like this foam of horses, but it was a tsunami-sized wave. Right, it was a tsunami of horse water.
I know.
If you will,
yeah.
I picked out this card randomly and she showed me the rest of the deck afterwards. Like, there's no way I could have known.
Yeah.
And then basically that just led to some weird thing where I would put my hands on the horse and the horse would react in certain way. And she was able to.
Did you believe in that? Did you have to, or did you have to do that thing where you're like?
No, I didn't go. I never go anywhere as a cynic, but I went everywhere as a skeptic. Yes. Right, it's like it's your job to prove to me some stuff here, not to, because obviously being a coach and working, I know how you can frame people's answers to help fill in the blanks. Mm-hmm. So I deliberately gave her nothing that could have helped her with that. So it was weird anyway, right? It was one part of it. I came away feeling better from that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that was the most instrumental part, but I guess what I'm demonstrating is I did all of these different things, and I was there for a week, mm-hmm. and I went in complete kind of submersion tanks, and literally everything you can.
No
think
ayahuasca.
Of. I didn't do ayahuasca on that trip. No,
yeah.
I haven't done ayahuasca, but since I've done shrooms and things like that, and they've been really, really helpful. But that one trip, that was the trip that broke the back of it. Like if I was up at like 80% affected by my PTSD, that probably brought me down to about 40%.
Really?
And I had little blips and fluctuation, but I never went back up again. So that was.
Why do you think that was then? Do you not know?
A bunch of theories, right? So the obvious one would be to relate it to each one of the therapies, right? Which I can't pick out any one therapy that did that.
Yeah.
I think what did happen though is I probably for the first time since it happened, I actually gave myself time to explore what was going on with me. Right, I actually gave that. If I take away all the voodoo and the magic and the woo woo shit and the flowery parts and all the rest of it, I think it was probably that I just gave myself time with it. I didn't run away from it, and I didn't do what I had done on some. I'd taken trips prior to that by myself, and places that I love like Thailand and stuff, and I'd booked a villa and all that kind of thing. But I ended up undoing some of that by drinking myself to sleep while I was on those trips.
Yes.
On this trip, I think I had a glass of wine with dinner in the evenings or something like that, but I wasn't drinking.
Yeah.
And so I was actually just, I was having these treatments, and then I would spend the evening reflecting on what came up, and not trying to figure out whether it was bullshit or whether it wasn't bullshit, but how I felt about what came up.
Yes.
And that made the difference, because basically I started telling the truth to myself. Yeah. And that's I think that's always the start. If we want to kind of use that word healing, the word healing only means to make whole, right? Kind of healing, it just means the same, to make whole. And when you compartmentalize yourself and you break bits off and you pretend they don't exist, or you overemphasize another part of yourself, you're doing the exact opposite of healing yourself.
Yes.
Right? You make the public need to see me like this, so I'll make that part of me much, much bigger than he actually is, right? In other words, I'll start bullshitting and I'll pretend that life is brilliant.
Yeah.
And then, I don't want them to see that part of me, so I'll snap that bit off and I'll stick it out of sight in the back corner somewhere where people don't see that I'm scared and I'm drinking 2 bottles of wine a night, and I don't want people to know about that part.
Yeah.
And that's the real healing, the holing that we need to take is actually say there's all these parts of you. Like, one of the ways I've always described it to my clients is literally every single one of us is a schizophrenic, and there's no offense to anyone going through schizophrenia, but we're all schizophrenic. We're different people we
all often have multiple personalities.
Right.
Yeah.
An example I often give is when my grandma was alive, I didn't used to walk into the house and speak to her like I used to speak to my military buddies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Why? Because it was the wrong communication.
All right, you can't.
Yeah, exactly, right? It was the wrong context. It was the wrong environment for that kind of communication. So we each know that there are environments that not only allow us to behave in a certain way, but kind of often confine and constrain us into a certain kind of behavior. And we all know that.
Yes.
And the fact that we can change our behavior in each one of those environments means that we are effectively kind of schizophrenic.
It's very interesting,
right?
To say that, yeah.
And that's not to belittle anyone who's going through the medical condition of schizophrenia.
Yes.
It's just saying that we all have that. We have these multiple personalities.
It's like energies in it,
right?
It's like different energies that we can take into each. Yeah,
exactly.
I totally get that. Yeah, so you accepted that,
right? And I think that's what happened during that first retreat, or that first kind of multifaceted weird retreat, right? That's what happened during that one, is that I was able to spend time with myself, bring the bits back to me that I discarded, and shrink many of the pieces that I'd elevated.
Yeah.
And and that was really just by examination. I say just, right? Everything is solved through examination, to be honest.
Yeah.
Examination that leads to some kind of new action, right?
That's all coaching is as well, isn't it?
That's all coaching is, right? It's get you to tell the truth, and then remind you to keep telling it while you take some new action based upon the new version of truth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
right.
You can dress it up in all the flowery words and motivational psychology and all. That's all it is. Tell the truth, then act on that truth, and do it repeatedly.
Yeah.
And that's that's actually why I love coaching.
Yeah.
Because it's just helping people to remember who they said they'd be.
Yeah. And you're not. And I always say this. I think you might. I don't even know who told me this, but one thing, and this is one of the changes that I had to make when I started growing this mindset, male mental health unstartable thing. I got to a point where I was fucking exhausted because I was telling people what to do and they weren't doing it.
Yeah.
And I was taking all of that home with me, and then I was like, there's got to be something different. And that's when I learned how to coach properly. Yeah. Because then it's on them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like they're coming to the conclusion rather than me giving them the conclusion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
a different ball game, isn't it?
It is a completely different ball game, and it's a really important one, particularly if you've gone through a lot of things that cause you to doubt yourself in the first place. Yeah. Right? Throwing yourself into situations that cause yourself to doubt yourself even more doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy,
right?
Isn't it? Yeah.
And I think a lot of people throw themselves into situations where they're more likely to get the negative feedback and the negative response than they are ever to get the positive one. Yes. Right. And that, for me, the kind of, that's why I love coaching in the first place. But that was also what I realized was true for myself. I needed to start applying principles back to myself that put me in a higher likelihood, a higher percentage of coming out a winner.
Yes.
And kind of being kind to myself up to that point was actually making me a loser.
Yes.
Right. So that was the kind of the point where things.
It's almost like giving yourself permission to be an arsehole, right?
Yeah.
That's what you were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like,
Of course, I'm being an arsehole. I've had no sleep.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what was happening.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I started to rationalize, justify, and kind of say, well, of course, anyone that's going through what you're going through, Dax, would feel the way you feel and would act the way you act.
Yes.
Which is true to a degree.
Yeah.
But only if they're running the same script that I was running at the time, which was it's okay and it's justified.
Yeah. So, mate, when was the transformation between, like, what was this like? Because again, I almost feel bad for people because they haven't experienced Dax Moy, because you kind of disappeared for a bit.
Yeah. Well,
you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I disappeared in the format that I was in. I think I needed some time to kind of work on myself and not be a public figure.
Not do it publicly.
Yeah, not. And kind of, I tried it for a while, which was kind of like I was trying to share.
Must have been quite hard. Must have been quite hard because you had a lot of big following.
Yeah.
A lot of popularity, impacting a lot of people.
Yeah,
and
it was
you
huge.
were not.
Yeah. But there was a second part to that as well, because I'd also stopped, and I don't know if it was because of the PTSD or I suspect it was coming on for a while anyway. I was actually bored of a lot of the conversations that I was being asked to host, if you know what I mean. People that I was speaking to mostly felt that they were having problems with their coaching businesses because of a business problem.
Yes.
Right. And they, all they ever wanted to speak about was Facebook ads and how do I get more traffic and what's the best script to use in a sales call.
Yeah.
And first off, I'm not a business coach, right? Kind of, I've never positioned myself as a business coach. I've built really good businesses, but I've always built my really good businesses because I've applied certain principles to them that then
worked for you.
That worked for me, but I also believe were universal, right? But that weren't about the marketing modalities or anything like that. It was like
about the tactic.
I've never believed that somebody has a business problem. Like if you're not getting clients to your business, it's not because there's something fundamentally wrong with your business. It's because of how you've created it, how you're showing up with it, and how you're talking about it to other people. It's not
often your beliefs around money as well, I bet.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so I mean, I'd kind of gotten a bit bored. I wanted to talk about. I always talk about like the thing is not the thing. Like people often believe that their problem is, you know what? If only I was earning a bit more. If I was earning 10 grand a year, 20 grand a year, 30 grand, no matter what the number, right? Because I've also then worked with millionaires, deca millionaires, kind of 100 millionaires. I've even worked with billionaires, right? And every single one of them kind of has a story that kind of, if I got the next checkpoint in place, then life will be good, right? So there's a.
And mate, there seems to be more. I think what's happening now, more and more. There's more and more checkpoints.
More and more checkpoints.
If I get this many followers on Instagram, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
If I get this many, this happens to me. If I've got this many subscribers on my YouTube channel, if I get this many podcast downloads, I mean, I don't measure myself on them. I think it's kind of good to have measurements, but at the same time, I totally get what you're saying because I've done that money thing before. Yeah. Yeah. And it didn't feel anything like I thought it would when I got there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I was 21 and I thought, I'm going to build this business, move to Marbella, I'll be making more money than I ever thought I'd have. It didn't feel anything like I thought it would when I was 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, all we want to do is experience ourselves being the kind of person we always wanted to be, right? There's a point where money helps you do that, and there's a point of diminishing returns where actually it's not helping you anymore. It's just, you've got more money, but you've also got more taxes, you've got more staff, you've got bigger problems, and it never ends.
More rooms to clean,
right?
Yeah, more clothes to wash,
right?
Yeah.
I think if I'm really honest, I got bored of a lot of the conversation. I'm still like when I show up now, I'm looking in some of my tribes, and it's interesting. The same questions are being asked that were being asked of me 23 years ago. I've been doing this for 23 years.
Yeah.
And I established myself really quickly in the industry. I'd only been in it for about 2 or 3 years when suddenly I was like one of the better known trainers, and then very quickly became one of the highest paid. Right, so I kind of made that first transition really quick, and it's shocking to me that to this day all the same questions are being asked, and it's kind of boring. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to anyone asking. If you're asking the question, it's because you feel you need the answer to it. But most of us have been trained to ask the wrong questions. Right, and it kind of being caught up in what you just described there, the likes and the loves and the shares and all of that has its place, but they're all vanity metrics. So they're just like kind of how many people loved you today, right? One of the things I always said was like,
Instagram are getting rid of that now.
Right,
they're getting rid. Then you can't see how many likes.
Can't see anymore. Yeah,
yeah. They've also Facebook have taken away how many unfollows you've had. Which is a good job for me. But you get what I'm saying? Like, they're taking all of that away now because they know that people are getting caught up in it and it's affecting their mental health.
Yeah. And it's also one of those things that actually turns out to be absolutely irrelevant, right?
You can pay someone to you can just pay somebody to like all your shit.
Yeah. I mean, really, really smart people will come up with some algorithm and they'll say, I earn $1.10 for every subscriber. the reality is that kind of no, you don't. You earn like $1,000 off of this tiny group of people over here each.
Yes.
And most of them ignore you.
Yes.
Right. So there's that distinction between value metrics and vanity metrics. And you used to talk all the time, and I think you still do, right? Like it doesn't matter how many people are on your list. Like, can you buy bacon and beans this week? Right? You know what I mean? Like, that's it. Like, did it generate enough for you to live the life you want to live? And, you know, I remember seeing a thing recently about that girl who on Instagram, she had 20 million followers, but she couldn't sell 37 t-shirts.
Yes. I used that in a talk in Barcelona 2019. I did a talk and I used that example. Yeah.
You know, so anyway, kind of to bring that back on track, I got largely bored of the conversations. I wanted to have the deeper conversations. So I spend less time online now.
And sometimes social media isn't the place to have a deep conversation.
No.
It's not, is it sometimes? You know what I mean? There's no tonality.
Right.
There's no eye contact. That's why I don't like doing these on Zoom so much.
One of the reasons I haven't come off Facebook, but I put all my best stuff into, I've got like a Mighty Networks tribe now, right? And one of the reasons I put it all in there is because I can say what I want to say without Facebook going, oh, well, you use this kind of word, or you put this thing in there, or we're going to downgrade that, or like, I think I love social media for the fact that the world has given all of us a radio station, a TV station, a newspaper. You know, we've all got the ability to say what we want to say, but I dislike it for the idea that I don't really own those things, and actually there's an editor or publisher of each one deciding, Dax, you can't say that. And if you say it, we're only going to show it to 7 people, even though you've got a list of 70,000 people, right? Yeah. That doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. And so that's why I like to have my own like private side rooms for deeper conversations.
Say what the fuck you want when you want to say it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And I suppose you don't have to deal with all those, because one of the benefits of these social media platforms is you get people who you're invisible to, you can become visible to. Right. But also that brings with it the people who can come and tell you to jump off a cliff every day. Yeah. And I got bored of I actually got bored of it, a lot of it, which is part of my radio site. So part of it was the PTSD. I just needed to give time, attention, and effort to myself. Yeah. And thankfully, I'd put myself into a financial position where I didn't have to get up and show up in front of the world today in order to pay the mortgage. Mm-hmm. I'm not a millionaire, even to this day. I'm not a millionaire. My best ever financial year was $750. Mm-hmm. At the moment, I'm earning a lot less than that, but by most people's standards, I'm doing really, really well. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But the reason I bring that up is that I was really fortunate. I got to the point where, you know, the math said, if you didn't go to work for 7 years, you can still live the life that you're living right now. Like that's how I worked it out. Like, how much do we as a family spend? Oh, 7. I can sit at home for 7 years. I've got 7 years to figure this out before I ever have to. That's cool.
Have to worry, right? Yeah. And you know, kind of, I don't know who first used the phrase, but it's not as powerful as that, but it's the equivalent of "fuck you" money, right? I don't have to show up on your terms because Dax is quiet. He really should be on social media today. Yeah, it's like, no, I'll show up when I feel like showing up, when I've got something to add to the conversation.
It's kind of that want versus need, right? I don't need to. Yeah. And if I don't want to, I won't.
Right. Yeah.
If I want to, I will, but I don't need to.
Right.
Powerful thing, lad.
Very powerful, yeah. And I feel really, really, I don't feel lucky because I work my arse off to get everything that I've got, but I feel really fortunate. Like I'm very aware that, you know, particularly during the COVID lockdown, like most people were panicking. They were wondering, you know, how they're going to keep the roof above their heads during COVID and all the rest of it. And I'm like, we're good. Yeah. Everything's fine. Like, you know, I'm like most people, I don't like seeing my nest egg go down. Like I prefer to see it replaced faster than it's going down. But if at times that happens, I'm just like, it doesn't matter. I know what I've created in the world up to this point is of value. I know what I've got to say is of value. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that really matters is, am I saying what's of value to people that will value it? And that's part of the reasons why I don't show up as often. I'd rather have a smaller community of people that go, fucking hell, that Dax Moy guy's got really powerful stuff to say, than somebody go, oh, that was all right, wasn't it? Move on. And I was just one of 1,000 posts they read today as they were scrolling through their wall. I don't want to be one of 1,000, right? Kind of, I want to be like the guy you want to listen to on this particular topic, and that's all That's how I've really been shaping my conversation for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I love that. So, another thing I didn't speak to you really during lockdown. Well, I feel kind of bad, but listen, I was busy. It happens. It happens.
I was sat at home every day crying. And thinking, where the fuck's
Why hasn't Paul sent me a dick pic?
again?
Yeah, again. What was lockdown like for you guys?
It was.
I was going to say, because you've got that little, I know you've got some kind of man shared away.
Yeah, I built a man cave at the bottom of my garden about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I've got my own gym, kind of game system, library, like everything. You know me, I read hundreds of books per year.
Hold on a second, are you a gamer?
Huh?
Are you a gamer? Did you?
I wasn't until lockdown.
Really?
I got for, I think when I first got the man cave, like I got an Xbox.
Yeah.
That basically I switched on about 5 times in 4 years.
Yes.
And then during kind of lockdown, I just
What do you play?
just a bit of mental masturbation and just.
What do you play?
COD, of course, Warzone.
Do you?
Yeah.
Jeez,
Ex-soldier. Of
mate.
course, you're going to blow things up all day.
Mate, I'm trying to get my son into Warzone, but he's a Fortnite guy. Fortnite's, yeah, it's kind
But
of.
to be fair, it was my son that got me into it.
Was it? Yeah.
So kind of when lockdown started, he goes, "Oh, let's play this."
Mate, I think that happened to a lot of people. A few of my friends, Smith got into it. I think Paula Lima's into it. Yeah, they're playing a little bit of.
Honestly, I'd owned that machine for 4 years and never switched it on.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 times in 4 years.
Yeah.
Suddenly lockdown, and but again, that was part of.
Lockdown. Yeah.
It's part of an experience I actually wanted to, not gaming so much, but just like, you know what, I don't want to think about work, and I don't want to. When lockdown very first began, I told myself I was going to show up every day and just be this beacon of light and hope to everyone, and have all this stuff to say.
Yeah.
And then I every time I logged in, it was full of negativity and pessimism, and the world is going to end, and like all that kind of stuff. And it just wasn't a. It was, coming back to kind of really knowing what I need now for my own mental health.
Yeah.
Just like, this is not an environment I should spend any decent.
That's what I was just about to say about environment. Yeah. I think that's so important because one thing that I've learned is that your environment, your mind will adapt to the environment that you keep putting it in.
Absolutely.
And that, for a lot of people, I think that's a lot of people, it's a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like their WhatsApp groups, their Facebook, who they follow on Facebook, what they're reading, what they're watching. It has a big impact.
Environment is so important, and it's one of the most underrated aspects of literally every part of managing self. Right? It's because your environment affects your feelings affect your thoughts affect your actions affect your results. Right? A lot of people ignore the first stages of that, right? The environments affect your feelings.
It's like trying to get fit in McDonald's.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. People are trying to get fit in McDonald's.
Absolutely. But I mean, in my Mind Map program, one of the things one example that I give, right? Each one of us has had that experience of walking into a room and knowing that an argument just took place, right? No one's arguing anymore and no one's shouting, right? But or you've walked into like a pub or a bar and you go, something's going to kick off here, like really, really soon. And there's nothing purely tangible. There's actually, kind of. So even though we don't pay attention to it, things like pheromones that are being put out by people, they're being picked up in our sensory system. Our sensory system is alerting us via our feelings and saying you should be a bit on edge here. And then that gives you the thoughts of like, got to sit with my back to the wall, or maybe we should leave, or the environment's a lot more important than most people give it credit. Yeah. And that's in the worst stages of my PTSD. I realised that I drove from my house to the studio. I got out of the studio. I trained the clients to get back in the car, drive home, and come out. And for a while, I was like really shitty and really dark, and like I was grunting and groaning. Unless you were grunting and groaning, that sounds completely wrong. I was grunting at people. There was no groaning. But kind of, I wasn't very talkative or any of that kind of stuff. And I'd arrive home to my family, and hey babe, how was work? Yeah, it's fine. And that's how I'd come in the house, right? And so one of the things I started to do was change my environment. So when I left the house, when I was getting ready to leave my house, I would think about the drive that I wanted to have. What's the route I'm going to go? Right, kind of what's the area that's got the most traffic? What's going to piss you off on the way?
What could I listen to in the car?
Right?
Maybe
everything from the music to literally everything. Yeah. When I got to the other end, I would sit in the car for 5 minutes without getting out, and then think about the next environment I was transitioning into my studio. From the studio, I would do the same, getting back into the car. From the car, I would park around the corner from my house, literally like 1 minute drive around the corner from my house. I'd get out the car. I'd have a word with myself about who I was going to be when the family first saw me again. and then I would meet the new environment as the version of myself I wanted to be,
Yeah.
right? So instead of grunt and grunt, I'd walk in, and the first thing I'd do is hug and kiss my family, literally spend 1 minute with everybody and talk to everyone, like, what you've been up to date.
Yeah, I love that.
Shaping, like, we underestimate how much environment shapes us, but also how much we can influence and shape our own environments.
Yeah.
And that was a major thing for me, actually. So, I said I went from like 80% down to 40. Things like that, kind of creating what I call safe havens, little checkpoints throughout your day that actually allow you to check in with yourself. And like, there's a thing, again, I'm always drawing on the military. Whenever you always see like people in movies, like with the cam cream on their face and all that kind of stuff, right? Sometimes you see them with a big bush on their back, right? But in the military, like when you transfer from one environment to another, you change camouflage. You stop at the border of the two zones, and you go, right, well, we have been going through forest, so we've had some twigs and stuff on us. Now we're moving through a cornfield. We need to get some of that on us, right? And it was borrowing from that exact same idea. Every time I change my environment, take a pause and ask yourself about the environment you're transitioning into, and which version of yourself you want to meet that environment as.
Yeah, nice.
And that was a major
Brendan
change.
Bashard has this thing, calls it doorway triggers. So he'll have this thing that he says to himself every time he walks through a certain door. He'll be like, right, this is the energy that I need to go in today. Yeah. I'll do things when I walk into the office. This fucker hears it every day. I'll go, come on! Just because I'm like, that's a doorway trigger. I need to change my energy here now. So the energy that I've got, and I do this when I go home. So most nights when I'm going home, I'm showing up at work and I'm hustling. I'm talking to a lot of people. I don't want to particularly take that guy home to my kids. So I'll often I'll walk home every day. It's a walk home because I'm changing my energy, and like you say, taking someone different into that different environment. Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will blame their environment a lot as well, I think, though. So what you're saying is actually you didn't really change the big environment. You changed not how you thought about the environment, but you changed tiny little things. Because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I can't change. I'm in this office. The environment's negative. The environment's toxic. I can't change that. But what you're saying is actually you can.
Yeah. Yeah, and so in my mind map program, I actually teach that there are 6 environments, right? And so one of them is the outer environment, the one I was just speaking about, the one that seemingly you can't change, but you can change how you use it.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't, like, I can't get out and say, oh, I don't like being stopped at traffic here and move everyone out of the way, and I can't take down the traffic lights or any of that kind of stuff. I can say, so what, for me, I found that at the worst point of my experience, I was experiencing kind of either road rage or borderline road rage every time I drove into work. So I said, well...
I mean, London traffic is enough to drive anyone.
Well, there was only 2 ways for me to go, right? Because I live in Essex now, right? So I'm a kind of a fake Essex boy. And there was only 2 ways for me to go. And both of them were really unpredictable. Yeah. And so what I said is, okay, well, if they're unpredictable, and one of the worst things, I arrived here early today. I said I get everywhere early, right? Yeah. Being late, part again maybe because of my military stuff, but also just respect I have for other people's time, right? I get agitated if I'm going to be late. It really annoys me, and so I realised I was always worried about being late. So what I did instead is I started actually getting up at 5:30 instead of 6:30. I'd get in the car at 5:30 when the roads were empty. I'd arrive at the studio and I'd have like a sleeping bag and kind of in myself, and I'd get an hour's nap at the other end. Yeah. The difference to me was night and day, because every day I arrived before all the traffic started. Yes. I still got the same amount of sleep. Yeah. Right, so I was always able to doze off for some reason when I got to the office, because all that agitation was gone from me. I was just like, oh, get really calm. Yeah. And that's an example of using your environment differently. If you can't change the environment, change how you use it. And a lot of people don't do that, and it doesn't even dawn on them that we kind of tend to have this idea that we're a victim of the environment.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because that. Yes. Right? Because of the traffic on the roads, I always arrive at work agitated and pissed off. Like, okay, but could you leave earlier? Yeah, but I don't want. Well, that's a different choice. That you not wanting to leave earlier is the same as voting to be every day caught in traffic and experience yourself how you don't want to experience yourself. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so I mean, there are 6 environments in total that I talk about, but certainly that outer environment is one that is really underrated. Often let go of entirely. So there's fuck all I can do about that. So I've got to ignore that.
Yeah.
But certainly when you put all six together,
people even blame like the town they're from, right? Oh, my town's different.
Yeah,
my town's
absolutely. Because no one from South Shields can earn any money, by the way.
I know.
Absolutely.
I know. No one from South. No one from this town. People are cheap here.
Yeah.
The town's fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's negative. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, as we've discussed many times, like no matter what town you live in, there's always someone who drives a Bentley or a higher, or not just a collective group of people that live in what everyone knows as the high end of town, or everyone knows those are the expensive restaurants, and everyone knows, right?
Yeah, there's always the most expensive part of town.
There's always that.
Yeah.
And people want to ignore that in favor of the, oh, it's different in my town, in my street, at my age. Like we're either too young or we're too old, and we're either overeducated for what we're doing or we're undereducated. Like,
yes,
everyone's in kind of caught in this Goldilocks idea that we're kind of there's a just right. And if I just keep pursuing it, I'll finally get to just right. And it's like, it's not how it works.
Yeah. What's the second environment? I'm in now.
Well, so
you can't say I talk about six there.
Well, so that was the six, but the first environment is what we call your inner environment. Yep. So your inner environment is really like everything that makes you, that kind of shapes your identity. Mm-hmm. And so those are things like your beliefs and your values and your sense of purpose and your sense of meaning in life. Mm-hmm. And again, these are things that people generally tend to downgrade, downplay, push to the back of the line and think, do you know what? When life gets good for me, I'll sit down and I'll do all that Ponzi exploring work. But for now, I don't need that. Like,
give me something physical to do.
Yeah. People think that that's just navel gazing and it's a bunch of bollocks. And it actually turns out that if you don't know yourself, like if you can't, like, off the top of your head say what you believe about any topic on earth, like any random thing that someone says to you, then you don't really know yourself. If you don't know yourself, how can you choose what's right for you?
Yeah.
Right? How can you say if there are things about yourself that you don't know or that you are mistaken about or that don't serve you, mm-hmm. right? So I never speak in terms of like right and wrong, good or bad anymore. I gave that up, and I have a bit more of like a Buddhist philosophy. I just think skillful or unskillful, right? Skillful being, given what I wanted to achieve, was the action that I took commensurate with that? Did it make it happen?
Yes.
Right? The more it occurs, the more skillful I acted. The less it occurs, the less skillful, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's unskillful to go through life not knowing who you are and what you believe and what values are your, which ones did your mum and dad put into you that serve you and serve you still, but which ones don't, and which ones should you displace or get rid of or downgrade?
Yes.
Right? Most people have no idea who they are. Yeah. And if you don't know who you are, how can you ever choose what you should do? Mm-hmm. Right? It all starts from who you are. Yeah. Right? So that's the inner environment. Then you've got the what I call the naked self, like everything about you with your clothes off that you look at, and you look at all those, everything from your hair, your eyebrows, your beard, the tattoos you wear, how you look after your body. Like, is that something that you respect? Are you looking at a thing that you respect or not? Right? A lot of people, as we know, like we both started out as personal trainers. A lot of people are living extremely unhappy lives because of their relationship with their naked self. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about everyone needs to get six-pack abs, right? But when you look at it, like, I think even if you had six-pack abs, from my experience, people still look and go, oh yeah, but my arms could be bigger and this could be smaller and that could be, like, no one's ever truly satisfied. But that's not the same as disrespecting yourself, right? When you look at yourself, do you feel a sense of respect? You go, I'm really pleased with what I managed to do, right? I'm nowhere near where I want to end up, but I'm really pleased with what I've managed to do for myself.
Yeah.
And a lot of,
I'm having this challenge right now because I tore my pec.
Right.
I had surgery 6 weeks ago and I can't do what I want to do. Can't do jiu-jitsu, can't box.
So it's not a pec anymore, it's a tit.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I find it really hard to keep my weight down. It's happening, but I'm finding it hard. So I'm loving that conversation. So do you respect what you've done?
Right.
Even though you're not where you want to be.
Right, because a lot of us spend a lot of time trying to make other people feel something about ourselves while we, in the background, are just giving ourselves like shit the whole time. Yeah. I'm fat, I'm overweight, my skin's bad, my hair's crap, my kind of bad teeth, bad breath, I've got this. Like we shit talk ourselves all the time. It's like, okay, well, stand naked in front of a mirror and ask yourself, like, it's not like grading it per se, or like, is it excellent and all the rest of it, but like, do you respect what you've created? Because you have created this, every part of it, right? Yeah. You've created.
You can do that with any part of your life.
You could do it with any part of your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Do I respect this?
And that's,
dude. What is you'll know this? What does the word respect mean?
Respect comes from the Latin respicere.
I knew we'd know it.
It actually means to look again, right? In other words, something is worth a second look, right? You're walking down the street and you see a person or a car and you go, whoa, that was fucking amazing. That was like you had a second look.
Yeah.
And most of the time, we're not even really giving ourselves a good first look. Hence the first environment, right? We haven't really looked at ourselves.
Yes.
But we're judging ourselves on something else, on a standard that we've never even really set, that we don't know what it means.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes when you really think about it, it makes no sense, right? That we have all these gauges and scales and monitors and validation points and all the rest of it, most of which we never chose. The ones that we have chose, they weren't really chosen by us. They were like, well, I think I'm supposed to look like this or weigh that or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So this idea of respecting ourselves is really important. And when I used to run the personal training studios, I cottoned on really, really early that as great personal trainers as we were, like we were the first guaranteed results PT in the country, then double your money back. I personally went all the way up to 10 times your money back, then 10 times your money back, and we'll continue to train you for free. And we were that confident on what we could achieve with people. But I realized for a lot of people, it didn't matter how quickly you could get them. There's always a thing like, yeah, but. And so I looked and I thought, what is it that the people who seem to be, even if it's a temporary blip, seem to be really happy with themselves about, right? And I modeled this off a lot of our female clients, and we had very wealthy clients. And I noticed that whenever they had a mani-pedi, whenever they had their eyebrows done, whenever they had their hair done, they'd come in and they'd be bouncing and they'd be happy. So on day one, like we'd sit down, we'd take all the weights and measures and all that stuff, right? And then I'd say, right, before you see me next, I want you to kind of book yourself a hairdresser's appointment and your nails and all that other self-grooming stuff that you normally do.
Yeah.
They come in, the start of their relationship with me was one where they actually felt good. Right? That's a method of changing your naked self very quickly that most people don't pay attention to. Like what your current groom are like. I look like
this is one of the things when you're suicidal. I've been
right.
And this is one of the things when I was seeing all these shrinks, seeing professors and shit. I noticed one time that one of the questions was about grooming. They didn't tell me about it. I just saw them writing it down. Appearance.
Yeah.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's one of the signs that self-care is huge. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never even thought about that before. Yeah, but that's a really interesting thing to see. Yeah, I used to go in all the time and be like, "What?" And there was an appearance button, not a button, but an appearance box that they were ticking or they were writing shit in. Right. I was like, why are they doing that? But now it makes sense.
Your self-care is really important. I notice from being I'm never one of those guys who likes to get all super tied up and I promise myself I'm never going to wear a tie again unless I get another invitation to Buckingham Palace, where you have to wear a tie. But other than that, or a black suit kind of job, I'll never wear one again. Right? Yeah. It's not something I want to do. So it's okay to have your own standards of what is your personal grooming.
That's mad because Friday I've got a photo shoot, and we were like, should I wear a suit? And Max, he said, and even Lesley said, no, that's not.
It's not who you are. Yeah?
That's not you. You'd never wear a suit. Yeah. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Yeah. But that's because you would think, that's self-care. I'm going to wear a suit. I'm going to wear a 3-piece suit. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to wear jeans with fucking holes in them, mate.
Self-care is much more important than most people realize. And it's because self-care is, and again, you'll probably stick your fingers down your throat when I say this, but it's kind of self-care is the biggest indication of self-love.
I agree 100%.
But if we take away the flowery bullshitty part of love and we actually talk about what love actually is, right? So there's a part of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC, which monitors our things like our relationships, our social hierarchy, like where we stand in the hierarchy, who we're connected to, and all these kind of things. ACC, a really good way of remembering the role of ACC and what it does, because it's really the love center of the brain, you could say. ACC, acceptance, connection, and care. So we feel loved to the degree that we are accepted, that people are connected to us, and that we are experiencing a sense of care. But that sense of love, that ACC needs to start with us. Do we accept ourselves? Well, you can't accept yourself if you don't know anything about yourself. If you hide things, you just can't. Right? You can't really connect to yourself if you're pushing bits of yourself away and you're saying, "Oh, I don't want anyone to know that part about me." And you certainly are going to see an experience of diminished care, right? Like you're not looking after yourself anymore. You're wearing it, you're wearing the same clothes for 6-7 days a week because I'm just at home anyway, right?
Yeah.
All of those kind of things, acceptance, connection, and care, are our biggest indicator of whether we are giving or experiencing love. And most people are downplaying that, the kind of thing, thinking it's not as important as it is. And our self-care is actually the biggest indicator.
Yeah, the interesting thing that you said there is all of those things are things that when I was at my lowest were things that were low.
Right.
So the first part, acceptance of myself, wasn't happening. That's why the show's called Paul Mort Talk Shit. Like, someone's going to say it, so it may as well be me.
Right.
That was one of my biggest transformations. I'm okay with being the guy that talks over people, being the loudest, being the one that needs the attention. You know, I'm okay with that. It means that I need it less because I'm okay with it. And then there's the connection bit. I was the guy that moved to Spain and didn't know anyone there because I hated everyone. I hated people. It was me that was the problem, not anybody else. Now I love being around people. People would even call me a people person. There was a stage in my life where you know me where I was like, everyone's this, everyone's that. Let's cut out all the toxic people. For me, I don't think there's even such a thing as toxic people. There's just toxic thoughts about people. You know what I'm saying? That was a big transformation for me. And the self-care part, I was 5 stone overweight, big fucking ginger beard. All that shit, drinking, sniffing coke, smoking weed, the works. So that makes so much sense to me, mate. So thank you for that.
There's just this tendency to downplay these environments, right? And to really shrink them and think that they're not as important as they are.
Yeah.
And then so kind of one of the other environments then is your home environment, right? So, one of the stories that I tell in Mind Map is of a client who was working with me, and she said, every day I wake up in my house depressed, like so to the point of popping pills, want to slash my wrists.
Yeah.
I hold a very, very high level job. Every day I go to work. By the time I get to work and I walk in that place, I am beaming, I'm laughing, and I'm not putting on an act. Like I love it. And I love the people there. I'm smiling, I'm laughing. And I go home again and I want to slash my wrists. What the fuck is going on? And I had to do a home audit, and I said, walk around each one of the rooms in your home, and look at it from what is, if you want to call it that, positive, like what you like. What's neutral, so I don't feel one way or the other about it, and what's negative. And she walked through and she said, well, it's most of the rooms are okay. I get a negative vibe in the living room, but I'm not really sure what it is. I said, okay, we'll go back into the living room and then look at every item in the living room, every picture on the wall, and she worked her way through, and she came to a book. And the book was, she'd gone through a really rough breakup with a partner, and inside that book was an inscription: "We'll love you forever. You're my everything." Like all this kind of stuff. And she said, "Well, kind of that." And I said, "How did it make you feel when you read it?" She goes, "I just broke down. I was in bits." And I had to get rid of the book. I don't think at first she was ready to completely get rid. She went and stuck it in the attic.
Yeah.
Every day she came home to live, she goes, I've got a completely different experience in the living room. Again, you're not thinking about the book, but your brain is scanning your environment all the time. It picks up that as your eyes just glance across the room, it picks up that there's a book on that shelf. It knows what's in that book. And there's part of your brain in the background computing, remember when you and Johnny broke up and how bad that was and how that must have made you feel.
Yeah.
Without that trigger there in her environment on a daily basis, she couldn't bring herself to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So our environments shape our feelings shape our thoughts shape our actions shape our results.
Yeah.
And if you can change your environment, you can always change how you feel about it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the kind of the missing ingredient, I think, in most people's approaches to.
And that's such a simple thing.
So simple.
It's such a simple thing. Like we even in our office, we have our values on the wall. Should be something that one can remember. We have them on the wall. We have our mission on the wall. We have what we're aiming for this year on the wall. Any awards that we've won are on the wall. Do you know what I mean? I think that's so. I mean, this is a lovely environment. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a simple thing to do, and I even don't think it has anything to do with money. I can hear somebody right now saying, "Oh, well, it's all right for you. You've got money," but it's nothing to do with that, really, is it?
No, there's a point where each of us would like more stuff, but it's not usually, to be honest, it's not usually the stuff we add to our environment that makes it better. It's the stuff we remove from it, right? Yeah. So, like, if there's a big dog turd sat in the middle of your living room carpet, right? It doesn't matter how well decorated your house is, right? You're going to have a negative experience of your living room until that turd is taken away, right? It's the same thing. If you've got things in your environment that are constantly triggering you into a negative experience, it doesn't matter how many new sofas you buy, how much bigger the next TV screen is going to be, how expensive the ornaments are or the artwork on the wall. It don't matter. Like if you've got things in your environment that are making your experience and feelings negative, that's the most important factor.
What about if it's a person?
If it's a person, you need to be honest with yourself about. Like the thing is not about whether you can get them to change, but whether you can change how you feel about them.
Yes.
Right. That's it's a difficult one.
What kind of tool would you use around that? I mean, I've got a bunch but I'm interested in because me and you never really talk about this because we're both coaches with some different approaches. That wasn't supposed to rhyme.
How many rhymes?
Like fucking Eminem, come on! Fucking Geordie Eminem, come on!
Well, a big part is actually kind of, again, it always starts.
Do you think we talked about that acceptance thing before, right? And we talked about that connection thing before. Do you? And this is 1,000,000% the case for me. Do you think when you are able to accept those parts about you that you might not like so much, those parts about you that might be bad traits, do you think when you can do that with yourself, you become more accepting of other people?
Yeah, absolutely, because we're all hypocrites, right? The things that piss us off the most, the things that upset us most in other people, like, you know, I would have a client that would turn up to me late for their sessions all the time, raging because of the client that turned up late to their session that made them late to my session, right?
It's like moaning about people moaning.
Yeah. But like the exact same traits, the exact same patterns, the exact same habits that are triggering them and pissing them off are usually the ones that they've got, right? And I know that's true for me. Like I'm not going to be a hypocrite about it. The things that I judge people for, I'm like, you do that, and you do that quite a lot.
And that used to be me with things like lying.
Yeah.
People working all the time, fat people. Honestly,
exactly.
I remember anything, it's usually anything that I've mocked.
Yeah.
At some point I've done it because I don't understand it or because I'm almost like, I'd like to be like that.
Yeah.
I used to hammer people for things like fucking Zumba, and I used to slate, this is my game, slating all these diets, slating, I'm trying to think of some other things that I've mocked. People working out on holiday, I'm like, you're on holiday, man. Now I'm like, I'm certainly getting to work out on holiday. I want to be pumped around the pool. Do you know what I mean? It's an interesting thing, isn't it? And I think that relationships especially will almost put like close relationships will put a magnifying glass. Like it's like it'll get amplified. All them things that you don't like about yourself, you'll certainly be able to point them out in the people that are closest to you. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and it's even worse because you have more intimate information.
It's right on top of you. It's right on top of you.
You have all the detail to back it up. It's not like a general slagging someone off in the street. It's like, no, it's very specific.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's in your face.
Yeah.
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 It's mad that. Yeah. So listen, one thing I want to ask you about, it's completely off topic, but I wanted to ask you about it because we've never had this discussion as well. And there's a reason why I wanted you to send me the post, the things you didn't know about me. Do you know what? That has been on my to-do list for me to do that for about 5 years. I just hung around with it because I don't write much anymore. But I'm going to do it. And there's one thing in there that you told me that I've seen numerous times. I've never asked you about it, either because I wasn't brave enough or I just didn't get the opportunity. Talk me about this thing with your dad when you were a kid.
Ah, right. Me
okay.
Me being.
You're open to talking about it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, basically, at the age of 15, I stabbed my dad through the heart. That's the short story of it. The long story is, extreme violent alcoholic. You know, put my mum in hospital multiple times. You know, kind of a really volatile man. He was from a different age, different time. He spent a lot of his time in prison. He was effectively a Glaswegian gangster. Yeah. Kind of like
Glaswegian.
Proper gangster as well.
Glaswegian. Yeah. Really?
You know, kind of robbing trucks and post offices and banks and all that kind of stuff. So kind of in that side of thing. And it was really, really volatile. You never really knew where you stood with him, but my entire life, right? So he wasn't my real dad. He was my stepdad. He came into our life when I was about 5 or 6. But I'd kind of seen and experienced, been at the hands of like these really violent beatings and kind of really kind of vicious, like proper vicious. Yeah. Anyway, one night I'm 15 years old. I'd been an army cadet. I'd been a boxer and an army cadet from age 12. Yeah. I had all this, kind of stuff from the cadets. I'd go hunting at weekends and live in the field and all that. So, and I'm laying in bed and I hear my mum screaming, and it wasn't their usual fighting and she's been hit. It was like a proper scream, like deadly. Yeah. And the next thing I know, I've run in the living room. I've punched him, and he's collapsed to the floor. And it turns out it wasn't a punch. It was I had a 6-inch hunting dagger, and I punched it straight into his heart.
Shit.
It was me that kept him alive till the paramedics came. Yeah. I was charged with attempted murder. I was basically the police were going to, even though they said they were kind of understanding on my side and all the rest, it was still a crime. I was going to go to prison. And it was only really the fact that he came from that old school gangster ilk that he wouldn't press charges and he wouldn't give any details as to what happened. So the police case,
I'm not a grass.
Yeah, the police case crumbled. But I was 15 years old, and
that changed your life or not? Would you say that changed your life?
It did, because I left school. I was a smart kid in school. I wasn't a complete nerd, but I was like we were in the last year of like CSEs and O levels, and so we had that crossover year with the GCSEs, and I was an O level group on everything. Yeah. But I dropped out of school from that, and then basically I lived with my grandma for a while because I wasn't allowed home. And then I went to live in the Brecon Beacons in Wales for 6 months by myself, living off the land. And
Fuck off.
Hunting.
Hang on a fucking second. Hold on a second. How, mate? That really happened?
Yeah.
I've never heard you say that, but I'm so glad I asked this question.
Yeah.
So what the fuck were you doing, mate? Hold on.
Hunting, trapping. Living off the land. Basically, I was getting.
You were like the first original Bear Grylls.
Well, because I joined the Junior Leaders Parachute Regiment at the age of 16.
Right.
And basically, I just thought, if I don't really want it. My nan was lovely, but she lived in a little 1-bedroom place, and she was really old, and I didn't want to be a burden to her. Yeah. I wasn't allowed to go home. Yeah. I knew that if I didn't get
brother's
convicted,
still there. Yeah, brother was still at home.
Yeah. I knew that if I didn't get convicted, because it was still up in the air, like I could be convicted for attempted murder. But I knew if I didn't get convicted, then my selection into the paras was still valid.
Yes.
And I knew what the start date was going to be, so I just went, well, fuck it. I'll go to Wales, and I'll spend every day running up and down mountains, getting ready for.
So you've done that penny farm thing?
I've done it.
Dude, that's
loads
naughty.
of times. I've lived on penny farm.
That's naughty, isn't it? Isn't that naughty?
Yeah, but I mean, I lived at Storey Arms for a little while in the forest at the foot of it, and I would go up every day, sometimes twice a day.
That's mad.
And then I'd move to another part of Wales, and I'd kind of live in a forest for a while. Then I'd come back and run the mountains again. I was poaching salmon out of the rivers. And
no way.
Catching hedgehogs and things like that in snares, and rabbits and foxes and
Jesus
river rats and all kinds of stuff.
That's mad.
So yeah, it was a mad time.
So you could say that incident did change your life.
It did, yeah.
Was the army the only option? Was that the only option that you thought about?
I'd always wanted to. My granddad was kind of in the forces in World War II, like a lot of our grandparents were. Yeah. And he just enamored me to the idea.
I'm not as old as you, so not me.
He just switched me on to the idea. I really, really wanted to be a soldier at the time. Wanted to be a para more than anything else. Yeah. Because he'd been airborne and kind of had served with, kind of what we thought was the SAS. I think he was served with a unit that was attached to the SAS in World War II. So kind of I was just enamored by that idea, and kind of that took over my mind. So it'd be kind of that was the route I took, and it just made a lot of sense to me that instead of living sleeping on the sofa of my nan's house, I might as well be in the mountains getting ready for.
That's fucking amazing,
company.
Dude. I love that. I can't believe I've just 15 years after I met him, I've just found out you lived in the Brecon Beacons. Yeah. That's phenomenal, mate. One thing you mentioned, it wasn't in my questions, but I want to talk about it anyway. Shrooms. Yeah. What's that vibe? Where did that happen? When did that happen? How did it affect you?
So I first had because I'm in my 50s. I was mid 40s the first time I ever even had weed. Right. So booze was my poison of choice. That was like most of us,
Dude, I got tagged in a memory a while ago where you knew we were boozed together. I think you were so drunk you were picking me nose for it.
It was nice.
It was nice, very nice.
But yeah, kind of like so the weed gave a different experience, but it wasn't positive, it wasn't negative. It was just like it's a different kind of thing. I wasn't that on it. But I'd been really thinking about the ayahuasca thing for a while.
There's a solution in the PTSD. That's why I asked you
for the PTSD.
That's why I asked you about it.
And basically as a stepping stone to that, kind of a few years ago, 3 years ago now, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Went to Amsterdam. I didn't want to get myself in trouble over here, so I went to Amsterdam where shrooms had already.
Did you go to a special clinic, or did you go?
No,
Did you just go to a cafe?
Yeah, just one of the shops. But see, you can't buy shrooms in Amsterdam anymore. Even shrooms are illegal in Amsterdam to buy our shrooms. So you can only get the truffles, or you can get shroom kits, right? So you can grow your own, but you can't buy shrooms there anymore.
That's mad. So you just had truffles?
I had these truffles and just kind of.
Did you go on your own?
No, Dina came with me, so she's.
Did Dina have truffles?
No, she babysat me while I.
Oh my god!
So she was making sure I was okay.
So you basically got the truffles. Did you go in a hotel room, or you sat in it?
Yeah, no, well, we had an Airbnb, yeah, and it was cool. It wasn't the full psychedelic, but
I've taken a lot of drugs in my time, and I've never had shrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
you're the second person that's mentioned.
I've had them a few times now, and they're like
what's the whole thing like? There's no fucking. I'm like, oh, what if I panic?
So, it's a bit like we've already been discussing. It's all about the environment. So you set your environment up before you go into it. And I will normally spend about an hour in part meditation, part deep thought, where I'm just saying, what do I want to get out of? Because I'm not a person. I'm not interested in just tripping for the sake of tripping, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was like there was a reason to do it.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to get the most out of it, set myself up for it. Like the questions I was asking, I'd have a notebook. I keep a trip journal. You should see the trip journal starts out with this. It's not like my handwriting is neat at the best of times, but it starts out legible, and it ends up the letters are about this big. And
is it? Oh, amazing! And you drew a unicorn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I get out of it is it's awareness. It joins dots in your brains, like because it kind of frees you up from. We often think in blockaded thinking, and blockaded thinking is all the yeah buts and if onlys and right. So you start a thought process. Could do that, yeah, but and you've got this and
what if?
And what I found shrooms do for me is that they remove the blockades, and you can just have the thought and keep following the thought through to wherever it ends up. Yeah. And sometimes it's ridiculous, right? It's just but a lot of the time, and particularly if you do keep like a trip journal, it's so like I go back and I read my trip journal and go, shit, there's a lot of really, really good stuff there. Yeah. And I've always found that like the best coaching I've ever received has been from me, but not directly. Like sitting here just asking myself questions, there's one layer of it. Yeah. But very often I'll throw things into a notebook, and I'll open that notebook up 3 years later, and I go, that's the exact piece of advice I need today. Yeah. Like it's like there's a version of me historically that
I think your journal is the best book you'll ever read.
Yeah.
Like everyone, you think about this popular book. I've been talking about this a lot. The Daily Stoic. Everyone's loved that book. I'm like, you're just reading someone else's journal.
Yeah.
Like imagine if you did that yourself every day, learning about yourself.
Marcus Aurelius, like same
what makes
stuff.
you tick? What makes you tick? Why? What you value? What you don't value? What you did well? What you could have done better? Like I'm like, that's the best book you'll ever read, and so many people don't do it. So I've got 2 questions for you. One, when are we going to Amsterdam?
Whenever
Mate, if there's one person that I'm gonna commit to this right now, because it's something I've always been interested in. Are you coming? No. Producer Max just said he's in.
Let's do it.
If there's 2 people I'd like to have a little trip with, it'll be you 2.
Yeah.
Now we've just got to sell Lesley on it. Yeah, who wants to do? I could close Lesley on this, I'm sure. She might want to come. All right,
Dina's been awesome about it. She's seen every time I've done it. Oh. Like, and it's not like one of the great things about tripping, for example, with shrooms. It's not saying you couldn't have them today and then take them tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. Because it's not that it does something to you directly. It uses up your body's supply of serotonin, right? And that doesn't replete itself within 24 hours. It takes a while for that to come back. So if you can't get addicted to shrooms, and you can't go, oh, I'm going to go on a 4-day bender of shrooms. It doesn't work that way. So like,
you're selling it. Keep talking.
So it would be like probably at least a month before you would have them again, right? And very often it's kind of better the longer you leave it. So I've done it, probably 3 times a year.
Jeez, all right, I'm in.
I would probably do it.
I'm in. And it doesn't cost loads of money?
No, not at all.
Oh my god! No, yeah, it doesn't make you fat.
It's cheap. It's cheap.
It doesn't make you fat.
Doesn't make you fat.
You don't get munchies.
Nope.
Amazing.
No.
Oh wow, I am in on this thing. Yeah. My friend Darren was in earlier on, and he's never done drugs in his life. He's like 28 or something now, and he did them for the first time in Australia last month, and he said it was amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've just pushed it over the line.
All you've got to ask yourself is like the value of any drug, does it bring you closer to who you want to know yourself as, or further away, right? The trouble, like I like a bit of booze, but very often booze makes me someone that I don't really feel proud of and that I don't really respect, right? So there's a balance point, because I could be a bit of I'm a bit of an all or nothing personality when it comes to booze, right?
Yeah,
so
me too. I'd never ever have a pint. I haven't had a pint of beer since 2019.
right. And
that mad.
I mean, if I open a bottle of wine tonight and no one else is drinking, I'm drinking the whole bottle of wine,
Yes.
right? So I'm not, I don't moderate very well.
Yes.
So I'm better off, which is why I'm these days, it's kind of like, I do still drink, but I choose the day that I'm going to drink. I know what I'm drinking in advance, and I try and stick to what I said I was going to do. Like, but it's never a case of like open a bottle and see where it goes, because I know where it's going to go.
Yeah, man, I almost want to check my phone to see if we can start. Okay, last question. How important is journaling?
It's pretty much one of the most important things you can do.
I agree. Why?
And the reason I say because obviously journaling is the place where you put your thoughts. So the most important thing you can do is have the thoughts, right? But journaling is the place where you put them, right?
Yeah.
I know that's really plain obvious, but like, you know, a lot of people talk about journaling being the most important thing, and it's important to the degree that it gives you the space to be truthful with yourself, which is the core of all personal transition. But it also gives you the ability to come back to that truth in different states of being, right? So the who you are when you wrote it, when you read that back, like 2 days later when you're having a pissy fit, you're different, right? And it's comparing.
Like when you get those memories on Facebook, you're like, "Fucking hell, what was I
right?
thinking? What was I wearing?"
And it just gives you the ability to record who you were at a moment in time, but then keep coming back to, did that serve me? Was that skillful? Do I want to be him again? How did I get to be the guy who wrote that?
Yeah.
Right. And we can ask the same questions about, like, when we're writing shitty things or things we're embarrassed or ashamed of, right? We go, how did I get to be the guy who wrote that? Yeah. Right. What did I do to become him?
Didn't happen by accident.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We created it.
Yeah.
And we don't like to admit it, because it means that we have to take responsibility before.
So if you were to answer this question, because I get asked all the time, where do you start with journaling? Apart from at the start.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Page 1.
Once you've filled in the bit that this journal belongs to,
how am I feeling today? Or how am I feeling right now? That's where I always start, right? Because that then leads to the natural cascade. Why?
Yeah.
Like, what led me to this?
Yeah.
Kind of like we can start the investigative process from the how am I feeling right now?
Yeah.
Pissed off. Why are you feeling pissed off?
Yeah.
Because no one's bought. I put 50 posts out and no one's bought any of my stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of. Well, why is that? And we can start to explore. And
I start with a very similar question. It's kind of like, how do I want to feel?
Right.
How do I want to feel?
Right.
Why?
Very, very, very similar, right?
Yeah.
Kind of two ways to get to the same. How do I want to feel? Why am I not feeling like that right now?
Yeah. Yes. Right? Nice.
Kind of when I'm kind of doing that. That's what my follow-up question is.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. I think the challenge that a lot of people have with this is, and it was certainly the case for me when I first started looking at journaling, was that when I was rock bottom, they tried to get me to keep a mood diary, and I'm like, to remind myself how shit I'm feeling, because I kept doing it, and that's all I got. How do you feel today? But there was no what's next.
Yeah. On the temple of Apollo at Delphi, know thyself, right? Kind of that's the big rule of life. My Guru project, I take that further. Like the logo on Guru project is know yourself, grow yourself, show yourself, right? So we show up in the world to the degree that we have grown ourselves, right? And we can only truly have a handle on how we've grown ourselves if we truly know ourselves. Most people are trying to show up as something different, right? Kind of, we're trying to do the end part first. Like, how do I want people to see me?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But the question is, have I grown into that kind of person who can stand in that frame and actually really be that? Right? Yes. And I always described there was a year that I was a dick, right? The year of being a dick, which was, you know, I'd been in all the magazines, all the papers, the radios. I was acknowledged as the highest paid trainer. Everyone was coming to my stuff. And I just bought into the facade part of me, the public persona, and, you know, kind of... and it was a year I was a dick, even to my own family. Right, I was the big I am, and just like, there's something. I eventually realised that how I'm showing myself isn't kind of who I really want to know myself as. Yes. What growth hasn't taken place here? I had a huge growth in money and public accolade and all of these kind of things. I didn't have a growth in being the person who could wear that well.
Yes, mate. That was exactly me.
Right.
That was exactly me. I'm kind of like everything else grew, and the only other part of me that grew is my fucking waistline. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying, mate? Dax Moy, mate. It's been a fucking pleasure. Where can everyone squirrel and come and find you to find out? Because more people need to know what you do, mate. I've said it. I've been saying it a long time. That's why I wanted you on.
I have a truly unique name, as in there's only one Dax Moy in
There's
all
only
of Google,
one Dax
right?
Moy. There's
so
only
if
one
you Google
Dax
Moy, you will find me easily.
Yeah.
But daxmoy.com, mindmapcoach.com, and numerous other places. Far too many to list. But
Sick. My man, I've absolutely loved talking to you. Thank you so much.
Same, man.
Mate,
been brilliant.
Mate, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was class.